So a couple things I want to make sure we highlight here. One is your point about one mass formation often follows another. I was going to ask you about this because what I've seen, and I almost wonder if there's not an addiction where because people feel isolated, and I will argue in a moment that is the most, because our ancestors were starving and because no human is equipped to survive alone in the world, being isolated is a terrifying experience because it's basically a precursor to starving to death. So when people feel that isolation, either because it's induced by somebody who wants to control them or because it's a natural consequence of technologies and economic systems that separate us, they have this desire to replace something that they've lost. They don't necessarily know what it is, but when it is offered in the form of sign up for this narrative and you suddenly become part of this large enthusiastic group, right? We're going to be the winners. We're going to end up with the food. And all you got to do is believe these things and say them and punish the right people and you can be one of us, right? That satisfies, it relieves the pressure of the threat, right? And then the point is, at some point, coronavirus stops being a compelling narrative, or the slate of beliefs is so far off the evidence and podcasts are so full of people talking about, you know, the hazards that you may have exposed yourself to if you believe these things, that people they're not enthusiastic about it anymore. And so then the point is, well, they're still looking for something that causes them to feel safe and together with people, and so they're primed for some other topic. And I watched Trump as this uniting force, right? We have to do away with this demon, become the public health narrative, right? They're obviously almost unrelated topics. And yet people went seamlessly from one to the other because they were on the same team and they had become addicted to that team. And I do wonder where we are now. Obviously,
yes. It was also remarkable, I think, that as soon as the corona narrative disappeared a little bit in the background, the narrative on the war in Ukraine seemed to fulfill a little bit the same function. There was again this tendency to consider the good and the bad very much in black and white. And then also there was like a new object of anxiety and a new intolerance for dissonant voices. Also this new enthusiasm, this new solidarity. Yes, I also think like at the moment now, it seems that mass formation became a little bit milder, mitigated a little bit, but I don't think we are rid of. So we see that the consequences of the mass formation are very, very severe at the psychological level. Like, I don't know how it is in the United States, but I think it is the same. But now that students are allowed to come back to university to follow courses on campus, they don't show up anymore. Only 5% shows up. The same holds for the professors and the assistants at university. The buildings are empty. In companies, I hear the same story. And the cultural sector, the theaters and the movies, nobody shows up. So that shows us something very specific, namely that the mass formation was extremely destructive at the level of the social bond. And that, the social bond, people always at the same time find their deepest satisfaction in the social bond, but they also have to overcome a certain resistance to take a step to the other because of all kinds of things: shame, anxiety, uncertainty, self-awareness, and so on. And so if the psychological energy invested in the social bond goes below a certain threshold, then you typically see that people prefer to stay home. And that's what they do now. Many people stay home, or many people don't go back to work, don't go back to university. And this probably will prepare them for an even more intense example of mass formation in the nearby future, unless, again, and that's so important, the dissonant voices really do their best, continue to speak out. And I'm confident that there is a group of people who is very determined now that they won't remain silent and that they will speak out.